Spoiler warning, as I'll be talking extensively about Season 3, Episode 1 thanks to them. Also, I was whining too much about Season 3 being shortened, so I cut that all out, and instead, I put a sad little mouse at the bottom of the screen whenever I was crying about it internally. The Owl House is one of the few children's shows that depict older characters as allies instead of just authority figures or antagonists. Ida's writing is arguably my favorite because she isn't limited to being Luz's mentor, even though that's a huge part of her character. She also has her own relationships, struggles, and victories that are her own. If I had seen more adult characters like this as a kid, maybe I wouldn't have falsely assumed that life stopped after you turned 18. So the Owl House has a bunch of in-depth teenagers and a bunch of in-depth adults. The only exposure I had to these types of animated series was with Avatar: The Last Airbender and Ruby, and you can see the disparity there. Normally, cartoons aimed towards younger demographics focus on young friend groups, and cartoons aimed towards older demographics focus on families. Not always, but usually. Whenever newer shows try combining these ideas, they often suffer from character bloat. I don't think The Owl House suffers from this because, despite adding new characters fairly liberally, the show takes two major precautions. One, it doesn't force prominence on every new addition, and two, characters are set aside when necessary. So we don't suffer from character bloat, and we manage to balance a friend group dynamic and a found family dynamic. Bonus points to Hunter for getting a buy one get one deal. As we slowly put more emphasis on the Hexside kids, retrospectively, where did their development leave them in the Season 1 premiere? Most people have already heard the whole spiel about why Luz works so well as a human protagonist in a non-human world. TLDR, her fascination with media, specifically the Good Witch Azora series, means that she already has a basic understanding of this world and doesn't have to go through the typical what the fuck is going on stage that most isekai protagonists go through. I did a few videos touching on Mary Sue's and was promptly informed that no one says this anymore and I'm old, but I still think Luz avoids being one. It's difficult to write an isekai story where the protagonist isn't chosen or special, but the Owl House acknowledges this early on in Season 1, Episode 2, Witches Before Wizards. Luz is a fan of fiction and magic and romance, so of course she thinks she's the chosen one when she's transported into a magical realm. She downright says it. This is the type of fourth wall stuff we normally don't acknowledge.
What if I, Luz Noceda, average teen, actually had a predetermined path of greatness?
Adagast catfishes her with angsty teen boys, cool accessories, and her own naivety about being special. And all of this is to lure in Ida, his business competitor. The lesson, while a bit ham-fisted, is that predetermined paths of greatness are baloney. Luz is human, meaning she has to use glyphs to perform magic. She never develops the ability to perform magic without them, and I think it would be cheap to do so. So Luz isn't the chosen one, she has to approach magic from a different angle, and she's a nerd at home, meaning she understands how the Boiling Isles work to an extent, despite her being new there. It's a great setup, but she seems super lighthearted and friendly. We need some flaws, or uh-oh, she'll be whatever we call Mary Sue's in the godforsaken year of 2022. Disclaimer, I have major beef with the character's only quote-unquote flaw being that they're too helpful or too selfless. And this happens in media a lot because, let's be real, being too selfless is an easy way to make your protagonist still likable as they broadcast their faults. It wasn't until the past few years that I realized my problem wasn't stories using excessive selflessness as a flaw, but the way writers often execute it. If a protagonist always puts other people before themselves, but there's no actual conversation about the negative reasons or outcomes, then what we really did was make a protagonist whose biggest flaw is that they care too much. It wasn't until, don't hate me, the 2018 She-Ra reboot that I changed my mind. Adora's biggest flaw is selflessness, but she performs this to play the hero so others feel like they need her, and oftentimes it comes across as condescending. I feel this way towards Luz. She's always trying to help other people, but she often fails to consider other perspectives or opinions before making plans. She means well, but her ideas often lead to others getting hurt. I always liked this flaw, but the writers really stepped it up in Season 2 with Luz unintentionally helping Philip, aka Belos. Do I blame a 14-year-old girl for accidentally helping a villain? Of course not. Do I think it's super important to have one of her most relevant traits play a huge role in the big finale? Heck yeah. Until then, every time Luz accidentally makes a situation worse by trying to help, we solve it before the episode's end. This is evident in episodes like Wing It Like Witches, Keeping Up Appearances, Through the Looking Glass Ruins, and Reaching Out. Luz has a conversation with her friends, explaining her reasons for getting involved, and we wrap everything up with a nice bow. But with helping Belos, there's a lasting impact. The audience knows her friends won't blame her, but Luz is rightfully afraid to tell them. I like how the villain is just a literal colonizer. It's all fiction though. It's not like Bellows could avoid answering for his crimes to the extent that people would post black and white tributes on Instagram when he dies. Wait, but Bellows acts like what he's doing is just, and despite Luce knowing that Bellows is evil, she trusts the way Philip talks because he sounds so sure of himself. But we also don't go into that direction of villain is so charismatic that fans forget he is in fact an asshole. My usual gripe with this flavor of villain, and this is a Shannon critique and not an objective issue with writing, is that I prefer when villains have personal connections to the hero. Bellows has a personal connection with Luce. She's the only other person from his world, albeit years apart.
And despite our differences, I want to help you, Luce. I can send you home.
Bellows is irredeemable. He's killed countless innocent people, and I trust Dana Terrace not to do the whole he said he was sorry ooh thing that completely disregards the real-world implications that such a conclusion would have. I'm not saying we need to do some weird fascination with punishment, but sometimes we need to draw the line with the idea that friendship is magic. Willow and Gus is where I think many fans of the show have issues with the writing. I think the writers heard this criticism and started tackling it, but it's not controversial to say that they're underutilized. Willow is, in my opinion, the strongest of the younger generation of witches, acting like they're Tank, and I love when Tanks are bubbly.
Thanks for the memories. We'll be back after we get some revenge.
Willow's story shifted naturally over the course of the series. Initially, her whole thing was feeling like half a witch, weak, especially when it came to Amity. I'm glad that Willow's character switched from focusing on her insecurities to focusing on her telling everyone, namely Amity, to make room for the new Willow, as she's finally standing up for herself and won't apologize for it. As for humor, I feel like Willow is one of the series' hidden gems.
This isn't a cartoon from the 40s, Gus!
She's one of the most terrifying characters in terms of power, but she's super bubbly. As for this dynamic, I don't have much of an opinion from a shipping standpoint, but in terms of Hunter's character development, it works really well. There is that immediate parallel of being half a witch, although for different reasons, and while Willow has already gone through it all, Hunter has not, and therefore, it's really nice how much she connects to and wants to help him gain that self-confidence that Bellows, to put it lightly, straight murdered out of him like 1,000 times over. Since day one, Gus has held a special place in my heart. I love characters who feel a tad removed from the main plot compared to everyone else. We also see episodes that focus on Gus being younger than everyone else, including how these insecurities connect to his place in the Illusions track. Through the Looking Glass Ruins and Labyrinth Runners do a lot to establish Gus as the resident cutie and symbol of youth. At a young age, insecurities can feel like they come alive and stare you in the face, which is exactly what happens when Gus's thoughts manifest through his magic. I often forget that he's younger than everyone else because his advanced academic standing makes it so that he tries harder to prove himself to his colleagues. I think one of the best minor details was how everyone looked lost when they landed in the human realm, but Gus just cried. I was also praying for a Gus Hunter broship, and by God did the series deliver.
Chief Engineer O'Bailey?
Everything about these two is adorable and probably my favorite part of thanks to them. I'm not the first person to say how necessary it was that Hunter met Gus and Willow outside of Luce, which, segue. Look, I'm not saying his story isn't necessary to tell, especially considering how close to home it hits for many fans, but isn't it a little telling that we were all like, oh cool, a new character, oh my god, he has daddy issues. Hunter is one of those characters who, despite being introduced in season 2, feels like he's been around for a while. I think most fans found his arc to be the most compelling aspect of season 2, and I'm actually at a loss for how to feel about the big event in season 3. On one hand, I think young traumatized characters should be allowed to heal, and on the other hand, I understand this rarely happens without setbacks. Hunter's character is the most depressing because even when he's happy or he says a comedic line, it just reminds you how cruel Bellows has been to him.
Teens are probably into the same things as me, like authority and rules.
When Hunter befriends Flapjack, that's when he starts to realize that there may be a future aside from the one he's been indoctrinated into with the Emperor's Coven. I like that we met him as this confident and obedient guard, but when the mask literally comes off, we realize he's just a scared kid. I do agree with a lot of the discourse about how not enough time was spent on Amity apologizing to Willow. I think they dropped her being a bully fairly on, so any on-screen bitchiness was forgiven, but there was a whole childhood of her picking on Willow and
I can't say we're friends, but it's a start.
You see how her upbringing caused her to act the way she did, and yes, reasons are not excuses, but I still like the way Amity left her bully phase early on in the series in exchange for her being the bitch who blushes and trips a lot. Especially considering I watched The Owl House shortly after She-Ra and the Princesses of Power, the sins of a teenage bully feel significantly easier to redeem than those of a mass-murdering cat girl. But we managed to do that one anyway. Can you forgive Amity for her crimes now? Can you? The Hexside kids got to know each other separately, but in a way that makes their group dynamic seamless in the end of Season 2 and beginning of Season 3. So what is this ragtag group of teens' backstory? Willow and Amity were besties as kids, but Amity's mom was a C-word and told Amity to drop Willow until Amity eventually became a bully. Willow met Gus and they bonded over being what I assume is the Boiling Isles equivalent of band kids. Luz comes across Amity shredding on Willow and befriends Willow and subsequently Gus, but Luz read way too many enemies to lovers fan fictions and tries to befriend Amity until she's worn down to a reluctant ally friend, then holy shit, her enemies to lovers plan worked. Hunter is introduced and immediately the fans were cheering for the sibling dynamic that only got better with time. Hunter and Amity fought and it was one of the rawest duels in the series. You could see Hunter starts to regret his life choices when all he got out of it was a smidgen of blood. Separately, Hunter meets Willow and Gus and learns that the Emperor's Coven may suck and maybe being a kid is more fun than being a child soldier. All of the kiddies end up fighting Bellos and barely escaping the Collector before being launched from this traumatic experience into ... a summer montage! Despite us not having seen the 5 characters in one room a whole lot, the audience was already familiar with their individual dynamics, which made this group as a whole familiar. I really wanted to see more of this group in a casual episodic setting, but considering what we had, thanks to them, was solid. Once again, spoilers, so beware. Considering this final season is divided into 3 parts, it was smart to make one special about the Hexside kids getting back to the Boiling Isles. And let's do a play-by-play of the entire thing. We pick up immediately where Season 2 left off. Pretend we don't see the amphibia reference because it makes me think about this. And Luz and Hunter waste no time in agreeing that their secrets are far too juicy to disclose. Dana avoids doing a previously on The Owl House by having Camila try to understand the plot of the first 2 seasons. And oh, the Bellos goo is back. Gus and Hunter get more of their bro dynamic while Amity and Willow fuck up an alarm clock that had it coming. Luz is traumatized, but don't worry, we have an upbeat montage in which Luz comes out to her mom in Comic Sans. Amity officially cancels her own mom, and Hunter cuts his hair at 3 a.m., just like me. We see that the kids are trying to find a way back, they're failing, and wow, where the fuck did the light in Luz's eyes go? This is depressing. We finally get that Duolingo reference.
Practice every day.
Or I'll appear in your nightmares.
Flapjack digs up a map thing, and Luz is, once again, not vibing. Hunter's into tie-dye wolfcore, Gus gets Hunter into sci-fi, and Camila has a series of nightmares that show she never hated Luz's creativity, but she was worried that Luz would endure the same bullying she had. They patch things up, I still have no idea what Luz's palisman will be, and oh god, the evil goo found Hunter. We get another montage in which the witch kids do some snooping, meet a giraffe, and reluctantly go to the Historical Society, but the weird guy was fired and we meet Masha, who knows about the map puzzle thing. By the way, the map leads to the Titan's Blood, aka a portal home, and they're going to surprise Luz with it on Halloween. Luz and Hunter go Bellos hunting, which leads to more tears, and Luz records herself being sad. It parallels really well with the first 2 seasons though, so I'll give the sadness a pass. Look how adorable these costumes are, especially Willow's. And Hunter has some Bellos goo on him, they go on a hayride where they find out Philip canceled Caleb for wanting a piece of wussy. You can guess what that is. And finally Hunter is like, no seriously, Bellos is here for some Titan blood, and Luz is like, don't worry, I've seen Scooby-Doo a million times, separating from the group is always a good thing. Camila finds Luz's confessionals and learns that Luz plans to stay in the human realm permanently. Bellos possesses Hunter as the Nerva Titan blood, but hey, at least that means Luz can do magic now. V uses morally dubious yet extremely convenient phone tracking, and the squad comes in just as Luz is like, Hunter sounds a little funky. Hunter/Bellos reads Luz's receipts in front of the audience, and oh shit, the animation is smooth. You know what that means. Hunter stands up against Bellos and nearly dies as Bellos opens a portal. Flapjack fucking dies, we all cry, and Hunter manages to add another tick to his trauma list. Luz has a drama moment, Camila is like, get in loser, we're going to the Boiling Isles, Zeno Robinson delivers the most heartbreaking line of the day.
For Flapjack?
And everyone is ready to kick some Bellos ass. Bell ass. I want to talk about how beautifully paralleled to the first episode this is. The first time Luz goes through the portal, it's chasing her Azura book that her mom told her was making it hard for her to fit in. This time when she enters the portal, her mom tells her to bring her Azura hat, demonstrating that she's no longer using the portal to escape, but to defend hand in hand with her mom. This special also confronts that Luz inadvertently helped Belos, and Hunter is a Grimwalker. Both of these things are addressed at the episode's end.
You even helped me meet the Collector.
What?
Do human doctors know about possession?
We're Grimwalkers?
Possession?
Grimwalkers?
I think this was a good call because it still showed that Luz and Hunter held out for months because of how terrified they were of rejection. And even when they admitted to it, it was out of necessity and not of their own accord. Yeah, that's not as healthy, but it was way more realistic given how fragile everyone felt after facing down with Belos. Belos was built up, which was something I wasn't sure we'd get in the first special. We were all like, whoa, what's that funky goo pulling a slip and slide on Hunter? And then boom, it was Belos coming for blood. Literally. Being possessed by baddies has been a running cartoon trend, but I think it works really well with Hunter's case, as his biggest fear is the fact he's a clone of Belos' brother that Belos created hundreds of times over and killed hundreds of times over. This special focused primarily on Luz and Hunter, which makes sense given we've already hit a certain sense of finality with Willow, Gus, and Amity's stories, as well as V, who developed separately from the group. Gus feels confident that his friends have his back now and like him for him, meaning he's able to help Hunter through his own baggage. Willow's confidence has really blossomed. Amity realizes that her fear of rejection is something that she shares with the others, and she plays an optimistic role. Hunter, okay, we still have a lot to unpack over the next 2 episodes for him. Really, my biggest takeaway is that not every generational trauma story has to end with the kid telling off the parent. I already said the Owl House treats its adult characters differently than other shows do. She decided to support Luz, fully, which is more than most moms would do if they found out their kid is going to face off a big baddie Belos.
That's the Belos you've been fighting this whole time?
Them walking through the portal hand in hand was the best possible way to leave off this episode. Hopeful and coming full circle.